The tragedy begins. Anna closed her eyes for a moment, soaking in the heavy silence of her tiny apartment in suburban Houston. The faded evening sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting lines across cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. Reminders of yet another move. At 26, Anna was already accustomed to starting over. New jobs, new apartments, a relentless routine of resilience she never asked for. But this time, what weighed on her heart was something she could not leave behind. Family. From the outside, Anna's family seemed close-knit, a typical first-generation immigrant household carving out a new life in America. Her siblings, 2 older brothers, Ethan and Michael, and a much younger sister, Lily, were all bright, charismatic, and ambitious in their own ways. Their parents had worked endless hours in their nail salon, pinning their hopes and expectations on their children. Anna, the quiet middle child, learned to tuck her own dreams away in order to keep the peace and pick up the slack when things fell apart. Yet beneath this veneer of unity lay years of silent competition, grudges, and fragile alliances. Ethan, the eldest, carried a magnetic charm that masked his reckless streak. Michael was the hustler, perpetually chasing business ventures that never seemed to pan out. Anna was their rock, the one who handled the family's paperwork, the one who dropped everything when their mother's back gave out or rent was overdue. Lily, still in college, was largely shielded from the family's struggles, but swift to embrace the drama when it suited her. All these cracks began to widen when Ethan and Michael invested blindly in a supposedly risk-free real estate deal. Weeks passed before Anna noticed the strange calls on her phone. Unknown numbers demanding payment, mail arriving with her name on debts she didn't recall. Each evening, she would ask Ethan and Michael for explanations. Their answers came in hurried half-truths. "Don't worry, it's just short-term. We'll handle it. You always stress too much." The truth slammed into her all at once. One cold October afternoon, Anna came home to find her parents, Ethan and Michael, seated around the kitchen table shuffling through a pile of overdue notices and threatening letters. Her heart pounded as Ethan slid a thick envelope across the table. A loan document, her name listed as the guarantor. Michael avoided eye contact, his hands trembling as he muttered, "It was just paperwork, Anna. We needed your good credit. We thought you'd understand." Shock numbed Anna's body. She remembered signing a bundle of forms Ethan had insisted were part of routine tax stuff for the family business. He'd rushed her through it, tossing them onto her lap with a tired smile. At the time, she was frantically balancing 2 jobs and a night class. She'd signed, trusting him, trusting family. "She chose to sign. No one forced her," Lily piped up from her corner, fingers flying across her phone, broadcasting the confrontation in the group chat. Anna tasted bitterness at the back of her throat. It was all happening so quickly. Ethan's words grew sharper, shifting the blame. "If you paid more attention to what's best for us instead of always worrying about yourself, we wouldn't be here." Their mother, wringing her hands, looked everywhere except into Anna's eyes. Within days, the family had made their position clear. Anna was solely responsible for the entire loan, use $180,000, far beyond anything she had ever seen. The calls and letters multiplied, threats growing uglier. Anna pleaded for help, but Ethan claimed to be broke, and Michael's new startup had already swallowed any spare cash. What stung even more deeply was the isolation. Her parents, tired and desperate, urged her to be the bigger person. After all, family comes first. Former confidences with her siblings turned to silence or outright scorn. Lily called her dramatic and disappeared to campus for weeks at a time. Anna spiraled, not from the enormity of the debt, but from the crushing realization that she had been cast out so easily by those she had sacrificed so much for. The people she loved most had used her trust, and discarded her when it became inconvenient. In the darkness of her small apartment, debt notices strewn across the table, Anna faced the truth. This wasn't just financial ruin. This was betrayal, pure and simple. The tragedy had only just begun, but something hardened inside her that night. Anna vowed she would not go under, and, most of all, she would never forget. The collapse. The days that followed were a blur of ringing phones, mounting bills, and sleepless nights. Anna found herself drifting through her shifts at the cafe, her attention constantly pulled back to the grim reality of her collapsing finances. The threat of losing her tiny apartment, her already threadbare safety net, became more real with each passing day. When evening fell, panic gnawed at her. How could things have unraveled so spectacularly and so quickly? Anna tried, at first, to hold the family together with logic and pleas. She called Ethan repeatedly, her messages a mix of desperation and questions. Sometimes, he answered with clipped, impatient tones. "I'm busy, Anna. Don't drag me down with your drama." Michael ignored her altogether, his silence more brutal than any harsh word. Even her mother's voice over the phone sounded distant, echoing the same refrain. "You're smart. You'll think of something." Visiting her childhood home for help became an exercise in humiliation. Each time she stepped in, the air was thick with tension. Ethan seldom looked up from his laptop, while Michael made quick exits. Lily, glued to her phone, snapped, "Don't make this about you," when Anna struggled to explain her predicament. The sense of betrayal, once a sharp sting, now became a dull ache, spreading through her chest and darkening every thought. Creditors became relentless. The calls came day and night, some measured and legal, others laced with threats and condescension. Anna's hands shook every time her phone vibrated. One afternoon, a debt collector showed up at the cafe, handing her a final notice in full view of her coworkers. The humiliation sat heavy in her gut as she forced herself to finish the rest of her shift through a haze of muted tears. Anna kept searching for solutions. She visited a community legal clinic, clutching her binder of notices and contracts. By the end of her appointment, she realized just how thoroughly she'd been boxed in. There was little recourse, with her signature in all the right places, and her brother's responsibilities cleverly shielded or obscured. The system didn't care about family drama. Her story was just another file in a stack of lost causes. The pressure soon seeped into every corner of her life. Bills piled up in unopened envelopes. She began to ration groceries, skipping lunch some days, daunted by the grocery line's rising totals. Friends inquired about her absence from gatherings, only for Anna to deflect, unwilling to let anyone see the gravity of her burdens. Her sleep fractured into short, fitful bursts riddled with anxious dreams. She would jolt awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, certain she'd forgotten something crucial, or that the landlord would come knocking. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, her appetite shrank. A constant weight settled over her shoulders. Amidst the storm, Anna's internal landscape began to change. The despair, like a tide, brought with it waves of helplessness and humiliation, but also the first faint flickers of anger. She replayed every interaction with her family, every dismissive reply and sidelong glance. The guilt and blame shifted within her, slowly morphing into a simmering resentment. She asked herself, why should she bear this alone? Why had they chosen her, the most loyal, to betray? One evening, as she sat on her bare mattress, surrounded by final notices, Anna felt something shift. With nothing left to lose, she stopped pleading. She let her misery crystallize into focus. If her family could turn on her to save themselves, what was left worth protecting? Why should she keep suffering for people who couldn't even look her in the eye as she drowned? She stood in front of her small bathroom mirror, seeing herself. Gaunt, exhausted, but alive. Her reflection stared back, eyes dark with a new kind of resolve. For the first time, Anna wondered what might happen if she stopped playing the victim. If she could teach them something about consequences and justice on her own terms. In that single, quiet moment, Anna understood. Survival would not be enough. If she was going to pull herself out of this pit, she would need to do it on her own. And she would need to change. Collapse, she realized, was not her ending. It was the beginning of something utterly different. Rising from pain. For weeks, Anna moved through her days in a fog, wounded, wary, and uncertain where to begin. But the raw ache of betrayal slowly hardened into something sharper. One morning, as Houston's sky turned pale with dawn, Anna found herself sitting at her kitchen table, flipping through a tangle of overdue bills and legal notices. With a deep breath, she began to make lists: debts to address, resources to call, possibilities to pursue. She realized that if she was going to survive, she would have to stop hoping for rescue and start rebuilding from the ground up, on her own terms. Her first step was practical. Anna took on every extra shift she could get at the cafe. She worked grueling doubles, volunteering for weekends, night closings, and early opens. Tips dwindled as the recession bit deeper, but Anna never missed a time card. She scoured job boards in her precious breaks, applying everywhere from local diners to big box stores. Within a month, she juggled a night job at a warehouse, loading trucks with a team of exhausted immigrants who barely spoke, but who, like her, moved with silent determination. Her body ached constantly. Her hands grew rough. Sometimes, during the dead hours before dawn, exhaustion pressed so hard she almost gave up. But anger kept her moving. The memory of Ethan's lazy smirk, Michael's sidelong glance, Lily's mocking voice. Each pang of fatigue became a badge, proof of what she could endure when everyone else had abandoned her. Between shifts, Anna made time for self-education. She locked herself in the apartment on Sunday afternoons, hunched over an ancient laptop, researching everything she could about debt law, credit repair, and bankruptcy. Community legal aid webinars became her lifeline. She learned how to read contracts with a lawyer's suspicion, how to recognize the coded threats in collection letters, how to negotiate with banks and credit agencies. It was slow, painful work. Every answer opened new questions. But knowledge, Anna realized, was armor. Determined not to let her family's betrayal define her, Anna also reached out beyond the narrow world she had always known. She started lingering after her warehouse shifts, accepting rides and invitations to post-work meals. Though often exhausted and shy, she found comfort in the unguarded camaraderie of others whose families, too, had let them down. She reconnected with old friends she'd lost touch with. Some welcomed her back. Others surprised her with quiet generosity. Hot meals, job referrals, even a couch for a night when the anxiety grew overwhelming. Most importantly, Anna became deliberate about gathering information, silently and methodically setting the first stones on a new path. She pieced together documents and digital traces left by her brother's business ventures. She combed through public records and financial filings, carefully filing away screenshots, emails, and bank statements splayed with their signatures. She didn't yet know how she would use it all, but she was certain she would, when the time was right. Through it all, Anna rediscovered fragments of herself that she thought were lost. Every victory, however small, became a reminder of her hidden strength. Talking down a debt collector, landing a small freelance gig, learning to cook a week's worth of meals for pennies. Her apartment remained bare, but a quiet pride took root. The bitter taste of defeat began to fade. As spring edged into Houston's air and the mornings brightened, Anna understood something crucial. She could no longer be the family's scapegoat. She was nobody's victim. She was no longer waiting for forgiveness, permission, or help. The pain had become a crucible, and what emerged from it was not just resilience, but clarity and a growing, patient resolve. Anna stood one evening at her apartment window, phone in hand, the city lights simmering in the humid dusk. She scrolled through the folders of evidence she'd gathered and allowed herself a thin smile. The path ahead was still treacherous, but for the first time, she felt not just hope, but power, sharpened by pain, ready to be wielded. This was her rebirth, and she would make sure no one ever underestimated her again. Restating family truths. Anna sat by the window, the faint hum of Houston's morning traffic drifting through the screen. Rain speckled the glass, softening the city's usual heat. She watched the droplets trace crooked paths across the pane and tried to make sense of her family's story, her own story, rewriting itself in her mind like a puzzle she'd never fully solved. Now, with pain transformed into resolve, Anna was ready to see her family for what they truly were. She had begun collecting more than just evidence against her siblings. In her new clarity, Anna found herself recalling the moments and dynamics that had shaped them all. The dinner table arguments, whispered alliances, slights, and sacrifices. She wondered if betrayal had always been lurking below the surface, disguised as love and obligation. Now, as she pieced together her brother's financial schemes and tracked each signature and transfer, she realized that money was only the latest excuse for their choices. Over the days that followed, Anna started reaching out to relatives and family friends she had drifted away from. She asked about childhood stories, about the years before she was old enough to really remember. Carefully, purposefully, she gathered stories, not just her own, but those that revealed the history her parents and siblings never talked about. An aunt hinted at old grudges between Anna's mother and her father's side of the family. A cousin remembered the way Anna's parents had always compared her to her brothers. "Your brothers will do great things, Anna. Your job is to take care of the house." So many of the expectations and fractures felt inevitable, inescapable. Her parents, Anna realized, had built their American dream on a foundation as fragile as glass. Hard work, yes, but also secrets, sacrifices, and scapegoats. Her father was quick to forgive the boys, no matter how much trouble they caused. Her mother was both fierce and fragile, guilt-tripping her daughters even as she shielded her sons. Anna had only to suggest, as a child, that she wanted something of her own, a club, an outing, a college far from home, for her mother to sigh and say, "Why do you always make things harder?" Patterns that once seemed like quirks now looked like warnings. Ethan's charming recklessness, which adults called ambition, was always covered by Anna's quiet forgiveness. Michael's hustler persona masked a deep insecurity. Even as a child, he'd manipulated, made up stories, cut deals behind closed doors. Lily, the untouched baby of the family, learned early on that the loudest drama got the most attention, while subtle suffering, quiet girls like Anna, were expected to swallow their pride for family harmony. The present chaos, Anna saw, was a culmination of decades of silent compromises and emotional debts. Now that she had stopped playing her part, the script had to change. but the other actors didn't know their lines anymore. A curious shift began to form in the family. Ethan and Michael's partnership, which once seemed unbreakable, grew tense as pressure mounted. Each was desperate to protect his own interests, but old habits of blaming Anna and each other proved hard to shake. Their conversations became more clipped, less trusting. Anna could tell from the tone of their texts and the snide remarks at family gatherings, which she observed silently from the edge of the room. Lily, too, began to lose her sense of invincibility. At college, rumors about the family's debt spread. A friend texted Anna a screenshot of Lily ranting online about toxic siblings and trust issues. It was almost funny, Anna thought, a family founded on secrets falling apart over petty online drama. Yet Anna didn't gloat. Instead, she watched, waited, and listened, learning more in silence than she ever had in years of trying to please. For their part, her parents grew increasingly anxious, sensing their illusion of unity unraveling. At a tense Sunday lunch, her mother scolded everyone for not pulling together, while her father sat quiet, his face drawn as he scrolled through bank statements on his phone. Anna noted the uneasy glances exchanged across the table, alliances shifting, resentments bubbling. She realized she could stoke those fires if she chose, fan the embers until something broke wide open. But Anna's approach was patient, not explosive. She began asking subtle questions, innocent enough, yet loaded with meaning. To her father, she said, "Ethan's got everything under control, doesn't he?" And watched the flicker of doubt cross his face. To Michael, she suggested, "It must be hard, always cleaning up for Ethan," and caught his jaw tighten. To Lily, she offered, "I wonder if Mom will ever actually stand up for us girls," a comment that made her sister blink, uncertain which side to choose. Anna even made herself available to each of them, quietly absorbing their complaints and secrets, always careful never to reveal too much. Her siblings, so used to dismissing her, now found themselves confiding in her, seeking validation against one another. Anna played the listener, the patient, almost forgotten sibling, while the true power shifted beneath the surface. Inside, Anna felt both sorrow and a strange satisfaction. She had never wanted to break the family, but neither could she continue pretending things could be fixed if she just tried harder. In reality, her role had always been to keep the peace, to smooth over the cracks others made. Now, those very cracks were spreading, and she would let them, maybe even widen them, when the time was right. One evening, Anna pulled out a faded family photo, her parents holding baby Lily, Ethan half smiling, Michael squinting at the sun, Anna herself standing apart, uncertain, almost overshadowed by her brothers. She ran her finger over each face and wondered which memories were real and which ones she'd edited for comfort. She thought about forgiveness, not for them, but for herself, for staying quiet, for believing her loyalty would ever be enough. The act of remembering, she realized, was as much about truth as it was about pain. As Anna continued her subtle work, family gatherings became tense, conversations turning awkward, each sibling guarded, wary. Arguments broke out over minor matters: who paid a bill, who forgot to make a call, whose fault it was that the family was struggling. Their acts of self-preservation exposed each one's weakness. Anna watched it all, quietly documenting, collecting small details that might become tools later. This slow, psychological turning of the tide, of truth coming to light, grudges resurfacing, alliances shifting, was not about revenge, at least not yet. It was about breaking the old story, one where Anna's silence was a given, and the others could get away with anything under the name of family. By the end of that 4th month, Anna knew her patience was paying off. The fragile web that bound her family was unraveling, and she had become its quiet architect. For the first time, Anna wasn't just reacting to pain. She was using it, reshaping the narrative of her life, and in doing so, unlocking the deepest truths about her family, for better or worse. The net tightens. Anna had spent months in silent preparation, quietly charting the fault lines of her family's fractured trust. Now, as summer settled hot and heavy over Houston, she felt the time had come to test the strength of her work. Was no longer simply reacting. She was orchestrating, drawing the invisible net closer around those who had hurt her. The first move was subtle. Anna began sending anonymous tips to the IRS about Ethan's creative accounting in his freelance business, just enough detail to catch an auditor's attention. She made sure to mention the unreported cash income and the payments processed through shadowy apps, all traces she'd uncovered while managing small tasks for Ethan in the past. The family had often boasted about handling things off the books, never suspecting those little risks would one day be turned against them. Meanwhile, Anna compiled a thick file on Michael's failed investments. She reached out to former business partners using a fake email account, finding just enough overlap between their grievances and her documentation to get them talking. In return, she quietly shared with them enough evidence to trigger legal concerns and minor lawsuits, contracts forged, debts unpaid, and bank transfers that pointed clearly to Michael's reckless hustling. The impact was immediate. Michael's phone inbox filled with angry, threatening messages, and his social media began to buzz with posts calling him a scammer. Anna had also not forgotten Lily. While her youngest sister was still largely untouched by the family's troubles, she thrived on her reputation as the sweet, accomplished one among her friends and professors. Anna found screenshots of Lily's online rants about the family, as well as records of plagiarized essays she'd helped Lily write years ago as a favor. Anna didn't have to do much. A few files sent to Lily's university's academic integrity office, and whispers spread around campus about Lily's duplicity. Classes became colder, friends more distant, and even her professors began to watch her more closely. By late July, the dominoes began to fall. Ethan, previously smug and untouchable, arrived at a family dinner with stress evident in everything from his ruffled suit to the deep new lines around his eyes. He barely ate, snapping at anyone who asked how work was going. Michael, faced with lawsuit threats and mounting legal fees, stopped answering calls from anyone he didn't trust implicitly. He spent hours ranting online about unfair business sabotage, but the damage was done. No one wanted to partner with him, and potential clients evaporated. Lily retreated, first from group chats, then from campus clubs, and finally from social media altogether. Gone was the vibrantly social little sister. She moved through the house quietly, phone clutched, eyes anxious. One evening, Anna overheard Lily tearfully whispering on the phone to a friend. "I just want it all to stop. I don't know who's doing this." Rumors swept through the family. At first, suspicion turned outward. Ethan raged about competitors trying to ruin him. Michael blamed jealous ex-partners, and Lily insisted someone at school was seeking revenge. But as the weeks passed, their nervous, distracted glances toward one another grew sharper. Old arguments resurfaced, long-standing grievances and silenced resentments boiling into daily bickering. They circled each other with wary mistrust, their former unity shattered by anxiety and self-preservation. Anna observed these cracks with a strange sense of detachment. She did not gloat. Her satisfaction came from the knowledge that justice, not petty vengeance, was taking hold. At gatherings, she played the unassuming sibling, listening, nodding, absorbing the shifting power dynamics. Through it all, she maintained her pristine public image, volunteering extra hours at work, helping neighbors when she could, and checking in with friends. Her own life, though still marked by exhaustion and debt, felt lighter with each unraveling secret. One afternoon, Michael stormed into the kitchen as Anna made coffee, waving a sheaf of legal papers. "Who the hell is spreading this crap about me?" he snarled. Anna looked up mildly, hiding any trace of fear or satisfaction. "You always said business would make enemies," she answered softly. "Maybe someone just got tired of being cheated." Michael glared at her, searching her face for a hint of guilt, but found nothing. He left in a rush, slamming doors behind him. But the true turning point came when Ethan was summoned to a formal audit. The letter was delivered to the family's mailbox, arriving like a harbinger. Their father opened it at the breakfast table, reading the government seal aloud, his voice tight with anxiety. Ethan could hardly speak, sweat standing out on his forehead as he read it again and again. Their mother began to weep quietly, clutching the letter as if hoping to will it away. Ethan prowled the house for days afterward, snapping at everyone, blaming Michael for exposing him somehow. Within the week, Michael received an official court notice detailing a civil suit from his former partners. Anna watched as he ripped the envelope open, and pale fear lit his features. He ranted about being betrayed and set up. Lily, terrified the university would suspend her and her reputation would collapse, hovered in the kitchen, eyes darting as if trying to find someone, anyone, to blame. Paranoia blossomed inside the walls of Anna's home. For the first time in years, Ethan, Michael, and Lily hesitated to confide in one another, their old alliances severed by fear. They questioned everything, old texts, vague memories, casual conversations, wondering if any of them had been betrayed from within. Amidst all this, Anna moved quietly, carefully. She made sure to be present, comforting her mother, helping her father with paperwork, showing up for small family needs, all while keeping her true role perfectly veiled. The more chaos gripped the rest of the family, the calmer she seemed. The deeper everyone else fell into uncertainty. The irony stung. For years, Anna had been the outsider, the one taken for granted, the sibling always expected to clean up the mess. Now, as their worlds unraveled, she was the only constant, a silent pillar, the last one anyone would suspect of pulling the strings. One night, as the house finally settled into uneasy silence, Anna sat alone at the kitchen table. She took out her notebook, reviewing every step she'd taken, every email sent, every tip dropped. She felt no triumph or glee, only a sense of rightness. The net she had woven had begun to tighten, and though it grieved her to hurt the people who shared her blood, she knew she could not turn back. For once, the balance of power was shifting, not with violence, not with screaming accusations, but with small, calculated acts of truth. As her siblings lay awake, gripped by the fear that any misstep might finish them, Anna saw clearly that real justice was slow, patient, and irrevocable. The first checkmate had been played, and, for the first time since the betrayal, Anna allowed herself to sleep deeply, knowing she was both the hunter and the judge in a story that was finally hers to write. The Mask Comes Off late summer in Houston offered little relief. The heat clung to every surface, wrapping the city and Anna's family in a kind of sticky tension that made every argument seem sharper and every silence more oppressive. The mood within Anna's childhood home, a place that once felt like the heart of everything, grew prickly and unpredictable, as if some invisible storm was on the horizon. Those undercurrents were nothing new for Anna. What was new was that she was the one quietly stirring them. It began with Anna's deliberate but subtle reach for trust. Her siblings, each wounded by their private catastrophes, sought comfort in predictable patterns. Ethan grumbled about the unfairness of audits. Michael slammed doors and scrolled frantically through his phone. Lily lingered at home, her confidence battered. Anna moved among them quietly, asking gentle questions, offering a cup of tea, a listening ear, or a silent presence on the shared porch. The roles reversed so gradually that at first, no one noticed. Anna, who had always been relegated to the background, started to become everyone's confidant, the one neutral party in a house divided. She listened, collecting stories, moments, and mistakes. To Ethan, she murmured, "You always find a way out, don't you? Dad still believes in you." He responded with a strained smile and a story about luck and hard work, but Anna caught the panic in his eyes. She let Michael vent about snakes in his network, never contradicting him, sometimes feeding his suspicions about Ethan or old business partners. With Lily, Anna gave shy, seemingly sisterly advice. "Sometimes you have to admit mistakes to move on. Maybe your friends would understand." Each word was calculated to breed uncertainty, gently nudging old alliances toward cousin collapse. Beneath Anna's care, the atmosphere thickened with suspicion and doubt. Each sibling began wondering about the others. Anna was an attentive audience, never speaking ill of anyone, but always asking the right question, or reminding them of a detail they might have forgotten. Innocently, of course, but always at a crucial moment. She became a mirror, reflecting their worst fears back at them, their secrets now echoing in a home that felt less and less safe. For Anna, it was almost an out-of-body experience to realize how quickly the old order could corrode when trust was removed. Before, she would have recoiled at the idea of sowing chaos in her family, but experience had taught her that love without honesty was only enabling harm. Now, in the quiet moments alone, when the others retreated to their rooms, defeated by the day's newest revelation, she could sense the mask she'd worn for years slipping further away, revealing something unexpected beneath. Someone strategic, resilient, and even, at times, ruthless. As the mask came off, Anna observed herself with both awe and concern. She saw in every sibling's uncertainty a reflection of her own past helplessness. For years, she had hidden behind dutiful silence, telling herself that absorbing the family's blows was proof of strength. Now, turning the tools of manipulation and doubt on those who had used them so freely against her, Anna found a strange sense of equilibrium. She was no longer above using their vulnerabilities. She simply understood the cost. The family's unraveling did not go unnoticed by their parents. Their mother alternated between anxious phone calls to relatives and emotional pleas at the dinner table. "We're still family. Everyone makes mistakes." Their father retreated further into silence, his presence at mealtimes increasingly rare. Anna made a point to appear calm, unbothered, even helpful, clearing dishes, filling out bill payment forms, comforting her mother with a quiet embrace. It was not a performance for manipulation's sake, but a claim to dignity she'd been denied for too long. Then, as rumors and crises inside the house peaked, the psychological games boiled over. One evening at dinner, a shout from the living room shattered the brittle peace. Michael had discovered a confidential email thread had been leaked to one of his business rivals. He erupted, accusing Ethan, who in turn blamed Lily for always oversharing. Soon, the whole family was embroiled in a cacophony of accusation, each voice rising in desperate defense of itself, suspicion laid bare. Anna stepped away from the fray, a spectator with more control than anyone realized. In the mirror of the hallway, she saw her own face, pale, tired, but composed. A small, almost sad smile tugged at her lips. For the first time, the others truly looked at her, not as the neglected go-between, but as someone apart. Michael's eyes narrowed in realization. Ethan's expression grew wary. Lily shrank into her chair, as if sensing the ground had shifted beneath her feet. It was Ethan who voiced what the others were beginning to sense. All this time, Anna's been different. You think she's behind this? The room fell silent. A tension, long simmering and now exposed, filled the air. Anna met Ethan's gaze, steady and unflinching. Instead of denying it or shrinking back, she simply said, "I stopped being your scapegoat." The statement settled over the room with a finality that none of them could challenge. From that moment, it was as if a collective spell had broken. Old power dynamics dissolved. The siblings were forced to reckon with the possibility that Anna, so long dismissed as passive and weak, had been watching, learning, and perhaps orchestrating the intricate collapse now choking them all. Each tried to recall when the shift had truly begun. None could pinpoint the moment. The devastation, as it turned out, had been quiet and cumulative. Yet as Anna's inner mask fully slipped, she felt not triumphant, but strangely somber. The role she had chosen for herself, harbinger of truth, breaker of unhealthy patterns, had cost her more than she ever anticipated. There was no victory parade, only the stillness left behind when everyone else's illusions had shattered. The siblings, cornered and exposed, understood their world had changed and that Anna could no longer be so easily underestimated. Long after the dinner table fell silent and the family dispersed to their separate, feverish worlds, Anna lingered by the window, watching headlights etch fleeting paths on wet pavement outside. Her chest was tight with conflicting emotions: relief, exhaustion, even pity for those she'd outmaneuvered. The mask was gone, and there was no need to pretend, not to herself, not to anyone. In reclaiming her truth, Anna found a new kind of peace, not the easy harmony of denial, but the sharp clarity of someone who had finally seen her family as they were, and dared to become something different. For the first time, she stood not in the background, but at the heart of her own story, unmasked and unafraid of what the next dawn would bring. The fraudsters brought down. The August heat settled thick over Houston, mirroring the suffocating atmosphere at the heart of Anna's family. It was as if the city itself held its breath, waiting to see which of the siblings would crack first. Anna's careful planning had reached its crescendo, the tapestry of secrets and grievances she'd been weaving now fully on display as the family entered the most precarious phase yet. In the weeks after Anna shed her mask, the household was plunged into crisis. Each of her siblings oscillated between anger, paranoia, and desperation as their worlds caved in. With their financial and reputational platforms crumbling, Ethan facing the IRS, Michael drowning in lawsuits, and Lily teetering on academic suspension, any sense of unity evaporated. Anna's composure only deepened their suspicion, and although none could prove it, each suspected she was no longer the innocent bystander they had once thought. Yet rather than rally together in the face of outside adversity, old wounds resurfaced, and petty rivalries gained new venom. Ethan, always the charmer in the family, tried at first to regain control. He arranged a secret meeting with Michael, proposing that they blame external enemies, shady business partners, jealous acquaintances, anyone but themselves. Michael, panicked and resentful, agreed only half-heartedly, his trust in Ethan corroded by years of rivalry and more recent betrayal. They whispered about Anna, calling her unstable, implying she would hurt the whole family to save herself. But their schemes were now built on sand. Every time they met in private, new evidence about their misdeeds surfaced the next day, sending them into fresh spirals of suspicion. Lily, for her part, attempted to play both sides. She alternated between confiding in Anna, sharing, for the first time, the weight of her anxiety and her fear of losing her friends, and then denying any closeness when her brothers accused her of being a traitor. But Anna, now used to her sister's double talk, offered only measured support, never revealing how much she already knew about Lily's dishonesty. At college, Lily's world shrank. She lost her leadership roles and her academic record was put under review. The whispers that had once been her source of power now isolated her, and her carefully curated image collapsed. It didn't take long for the alliances among the siblings to splinter completely. Attempts to combine forces against Anna backfired in spectacular fashion. When Ethan and Michael sought to frame Anna with fabricated evidence, Anna was ready. She'd already anticipated such a move, planting subtle clues months before that pointed directly back to their own manipulations. The moment Michael claimed Anna had stolen financial documents, she revealed time-stamped emails and text threads that told the real story. Their parents, invited to an explosive truth-telling intervention, instead found themselves witnesses to a gallery of evidence, bank records, screenshots, and even voice memos, and the brothers' narrative quickly unraveled. For the first time, Anna saw something shift in her parents' eyes. Her mother's gaze faltered, shame mingling with resignation. Her father, the one who had always brushed off the boy's mistakes as just business, looked genuinely shaken, unable to dismiss what was before him. The gravity of decades of denial and favoritism settled over the room. Anna said little, letting the proof do the work. The consequences outside the home arrived swiftly. IRS agents began their audit of Ethan in earnest, freezing some of his accounts and casting a shadow over his business. Michael, bombarded with mounting legal fees and demands for repayment, found himself cut off by partners he'd once coaxed into his newest ventures. No one wanted to be associated with a sinking ship. Lily, upon receiving official notice of her academic investigation, spiraled into anxiety and retreated from campus life altogether. Her friends, eager to avoid the drama, fell away one by one. Anna, meanwhile, documented everything meticulously. She worked with quiet diligence, consulting with legal aid to understand her options and ensure that her brother's attempts to shift blame would fail. She was careful to avoid the appearance of vindictiveness. Her moves were all rooted in fact, not rumor or theatrics. If anyone asked why she was coming forward, she answered honestly, "I just want the truth. I want to be free." Beyond financial survival, what mattered to her now was a clean break, a reckoning, so the cycle could end. Only once did Anna feel her resolve waver. Late one night, she found Lily crying on the back porch, shoulders shaking with fear and humiliation. "We're ruined. You could have helped me. You could have warned me." The temptation to offer comfort, to slip back into her old role as peacekeeper, was nearly overwhelming. But Anna remembered every time she had reached out only to be accused or ignored. This time, she listened without rescuing, telling her sister softly, "I wish you had treated me better. We all could have chosen differently." Word of the family's implosion inevitably seeped into their wider community. The old narratives, the immigrant family that stuck together, the hard-working sons, the promising youngest, were replaced by gossip, questions, and a quiet withdrawal of support. Anna felt the sting of public scrutiny, but also a strange sense of relief. No longer forced to protect an illusion, she could finally stand in her own truth. Even as her siblings flailed, some still blaming her, some finally turning on one another, the machinery of accountability moved steadily on. Investigators interviewed Ethan and Michael. Lily faced a disciplinary board, and Anna, for the first time, got real help. With evidence in hand, she negotiated with creditors and set out on the slow, exhausting process of clearing her own name. The family's collapse was not a spectacle of fire and fury, but a slow crumbling, lies exposed, reputations lost, each sibling forced to reckon, at last, with the consequences of their choices. Anna alone emerged with her integrity intact, seared but not destroyed by all her family's betrayals. The irony was not lost on her. The sister always expected to absorb the pain had dealt out the truth instead, ending the cycle in her own quiet way. Summer began to fade, and with it the panic that had ruled the house. Anna's siblings, once partners in deception, now acknowledged her only with uneasy silence or sullen glances. Anna had no illusions about reconciliation. It might never come. But neither did she feel the old ache of being unseen. She was, finally, her own person, and for the first time in years, her future was hers alone. Justice for the powerless. The Houston air shifted as September approached, bringing with it a feeling that hung somewhere between finality and release. Anna moved through her days keenly aware that nothing in her family would ever be the same. Yet beneath the weariness was a pulse of vindication, a sense that, for the first time, the narrative did not belong to those who had power, but to the one no one had expected to fight back. In this new reality, justice, slow and imperfect as it was, had finally begun to tilt in her favor. The final blows were never dramatic. There was no grand confession or cinematic collapse, just a relentless succession of official letters, awkward phone calls, and forced reckonings that could not be hidden away. Anna had transformed the evidence she'd quietly gathered, emails, forged signatures, threatening messages, into thorough written reports and clear chronological timelines. She worked with a pro bono attorney from a local aid clinic whose blunt compassion helped her see just how strong her case had become. For years, the odds had been stacked against her. Now, piece by piece, she was turning the weapons once used against her into tools for her own defense. Anna's first official move was filing a complaint with the authorities, both the police fraud division and the relevant banking agencies. She included not just her story, but cold proof. The loan documents forged in her name, bank account transfers she hadn't authorized, and digital footprints linking her brother's actions directly to the betrayal. Where once Anna might have hesitated, afraid of being dismissed or disbelieved, she presented each fact calmly, steadily. The days of apologizing for taking up space, for making trouble, were behind her. When interviews with investigators finally began, Anna's quiet determination surprised even herself. She recounted each humiliation and deception with a clarity honed by weeks of sleepless nights poring over details. At first, the investigators, middle-aged men, polite but weary, seemed skeptical. But as Anna produced carefully prepared folders and emails, recorded voicemails, and signed statements from those who had witnessed her brother's coercion, their questions shifted from doubt to respect. Her brothers launched frantic efforts at damage control, attempting to reach out-of-court settlements and erase their most incriminating tracks. But Anna, learning quickly from her legal advisors, refused to be bullied or bought off. When Ethan sent his lawyer with a thinly veiled threat, "Think about the family's reputation, Anna. You don't have to do this," she responded, for the first time without trembling. "You lost the right to ask for my silence," she replied firmly. There's nothing left to protect but the truth. The family's private drama became public. The local press picked up snippets of the case. Siblings accused of financial fraud. Victim fights back against family exploitation. Anna's photo, once hidden in the shadows of family portraits, was now attached to stories about resilience and tenacity. Old friends and former co-workers sent messages of support and sometimes regret for not having seen the signs sooner. Anna answered honestly, "I didn't show you. I didn't think anyone would believe me until now." What Anna hadn't anticipated were the complicated emotions that pulsed beneath her victories. The first time an official letter arrived stating that the fraudulent debts were no longer enforceable against her, Anna felt oddly numb. She expected euphoria, but was met instead by exhaustion and a near physical ache. A grief for the years lost, for the family love that would never return in the same form. On the night she learned Ethan and Michael would be indicted, her first instinct was to call her mother, not out of triumph, but out of habit. She set the phone aside, chest heavy with conflicting sorrow and relief. Her parents, meanwhile, retreated into silence. Her father, once so quick to defend the boys, no longer looked Anna in the eye. Her mother sent a single, carefully worded message. "We are all suffering. I hope this makes you happy." Anna stared at the text for a long time, her feelings impossible to translate into any response. She wanted justice, not cruelty, but recognized how empty the old home had become now that truth stood in the open. Isolation became, for a time, Anna's chief companion. Even as her advocates assured her she had done the right thing, even as the world seemed to recognize her integrity, she spent many evenings alone at her bare kitchen table, sorting paperwork and wondering what life looked like without constant crisis. There were moments, long before dawn, when Anna would lay awake and question whether she could have chosen a gentler route, one that hurt fewer people, even if it meant betraying herself. But each time she revisited those doubts, she remembered the terror of the debt collectors, the sting of being cast out, and the hollow ache of loyalty unreturned. The city around her moved on, but Anna noticed subtle shifts. Strangers on the bus offered her polite smiles. At the cafe where she still worked part-time, customers, once distant, asked after her and praised her bravery when they learned her name from the news. A few other women, customers and co-workers, approached Anna quietly and shared their own stories of being taken advantage of by those they loved or trusted. Anna listened without judgment, offering what she wished she'd had: a patient ear, a sense of solidarity, a reminder that even the powerless could make themselves heard. Her community's support carried Anna through the last, draining months of the legal process. When prosecutors finally contacted her to inform her of formal charges against Ethan and Michael, she felt less vindictive than simply settled, like someone who has finally set down a heavy load. She appeared in court to give evidence, her voice steady. She did not look at her brothers but spoke to the judge, to the record, to the future version of herself, a woman no longer defined by her suffering or her silence. Justice, Anna realized, was never going to make her whole. It could not restore what was lost or return her to an unbroken family. But it granted her something equally precious: a clean ledger, a restored name, and, for the first time in years, a blank page upon which to write a new life. On the evening when the last case closed and her debts were formally cleared, Anna stood on her tiny balcony and watched the sun set behind the city's flickering skyline. The old ache remained, a private testament to her wounds, but it was joined by hope. For everyone who had ever been dismissed, exploited, or underestimated for being quiet and small, Anna's journey was a signal fire in the gathering dusk. Power, she now knew, belonged to those brave enough to claim their truth and see it through, even when the cost was loneliness. Anna had become her own witness, her own advocate, and finally, the author of her own justice. When the wind changes. In the weeks that followed the verdict, a different kind of quiet filled Anna's days. The house she once called home with her family felt heavier with absence than with presence. A home not cleared by forgiveness, but by the steady winds of change that had swept through and rearranged every life inside it. For Anna, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next step, the panic now replaced by a tentative calm and a spectrum of unfamiliar emotions. She found herself unmoored in the honest emptiness that justice leaves behind. With her debts cleared and her name restored, Anna was suddenly, startlingly free. Yet freedom, she discovered, was not the same as peace. Long years of struggle had wired her for vigilance. Now, absence of dread, of urgent bills, of her family's voices filling every silence, felt foreign. Some mornings, she wandered through her apartment as if in a trance, coffee cooling on the table, unsure how to fill the time she'd fought so hard to claim. The whispers of her story rippled through the community, drifting further than she could have imagined. At the grocery store, neighbors who once barely nodded now met her gaze with awkward support, or, in some cases, sidelong curiosity. A few tried to gossip about her siblings, but Anna always turned the conversation with rare, gentle firmness. She would not reduce her story, or theirs, to a pack of rumors. For the first time, she recognized that she had the power to choose how her narrative moved in the world. A subtle, profound reversal from being voiceless to shaping the very air around her. But the quiet was at its deepest and most unsettling in matters of the heart. The family, fractured and raw, found themselves forced to face their own ruins. Ethan, once brash and dismissive, was now withdrawn, grappling with legal setbacks and a reputation tarnished beyond repair. Michael, stripped of his schemes, moved away from the city and left behind only the impression of bygone bluster. Lily, trudging through the consequences at her university, messaged Anna occasionally. Awkward apologies, the kind that circled forgiveness without quite landing. Anna read them all, sometimes answering, sometimes letting the silence answer for her. One September afternoon, as the first hints of autumn threaded the air, Anna's mother showed up at her apartment. Her mother's face was pale, her gestures uncertain, less the strong matriarch Anna remembered, more a woman changed by the dismantling of her hopes. She brought a bag of fruit, set it gently on the counter, and stood quietly for a while. The conversation that followed was halting, almost ritualistic. Small talk about work, the weather, church friends, bodies moving around the shape of a wound. Then, almost as Anna rose to refill their tea, her mother's voice broke. Anna listened, feeling the familiar pull of old loyalties. There was hurt, yes, and resentment that still ran deep, but layered over it was something else. A weary compassion for a mother who had never learned how to love without placing conditions. Anna didn't shrink from her words, nor did she offer hollow reassurances. Instead, she spoke plainly. We could have all chosen differently. I wish you'd listened when I needed you. A heavy silence fell between them. Then quietly, her mother asked, Can you forgive me? It was not a request Anna had been waiting for, but neither was it something she could easily give. She realized, for perhaps the first time, that forgiveness was not so much an act of absolution as it was a release, a way to let the past breathe without dictating the future. Anna felt the old bitterness in her chest, but now it was threaded with understanding. She saw her mother as flawed, scared, shaped by her own wounds. not a villain, but a woman stumbling through the same storms. "I'm trying," Anna answered, her voice soft but honest. "But I have to do it in my own time. I don't know what that looks like yet." Her mother nodded, relief and grief intertwined in her eyes, an acknowledgement that the tides had shifted and that nothing would ever return to its old, suffocating shape. After her mother left, Anna sat by the window and watched the city's turning colors. She thought of her siblings, wherever they were, each left with their own reckonings. The epicenter of blame and betrayal had moved on. What remained was the possibility for something new, something no longer ruled by secrecy or fear. A week later, Lily sent a message longer than usual. She asked Anna if they could meet at a small park from their childhood, promising no drama, only honesty. Anna agreed, curiosity and cautious hope warring within her. When they met amid the gentle clatter of leaves, Lily looked haunted but more adult, her bravado finally spent. "I hurt you," Lily said, not hiding behind defensiveness for the first time. "I followed everyone else because it was easier." "I'm sorry. I know it can't fix anything, but I needed to say it to your face." Anna absorbed these words, sensing their sincerity. The conversation rambled into the future, their fears, the possibility of stumbling toward a different kind of sisterhood. There were no promises, only a tentative agreement to try, to check in, to meet as new versions of themselves rather than as extensions of old wounds. Anna came to understand that turning the page on a family legacy did not mean erasing all trace of it. She could miss what had once been good, mourn what was lost, and still choose to move forward with clarity and strength. Evenings became gentler. She found solace in small routines, watering plants on her windowsill, crossing the city to volunteer at a shelter, relearning how to laugh in the company of friends who saw not just her scars, but also her resilience. As the wind changed and the city braced for autumn, Anna finally breathed deeply, letting go of the air of old grievances. She had confronted the shadows cast by her family, named them, and survived their aftermath. The powerlessness that once defined her had given way to agency, the right to forgive only as she wished, to reconnect on her terms, and to imagine a future marked more by hope than by harm. For the first time, Anna realized the winds of change were not something to hunker down against, but something she could open her windows to, letting in what was fresh, uncertain, and ultimately hers. Rising from the bottom. The first true days of autumn swept through Houston with both clarity and gentleness, ushering in a season that seemed new in every sense for Anna. There was a quiet at the core of her life now, a silence that no longer bred anxiety, but instead made room for careful self-examination. Instead of dreading the void left by family drama and debts, Anna began to discover what could rise in its place. Out of all the lessons the past year had brought her, this one, how to build herself back up on her own terms with dignity intact, would emerge as the most precious of all. She started her mornings not with panic or heavy thoughts of loss, but with deliberate simplicity. Coffee steamed gently as she watched a city waking beyond her window. She opened the curtains wide, letting the light touch spaces too long shadowed. Waking up early became a point of pride, a small but tangible discipline she claimed for herself. Anna made her bed, not as a chore, but as a promise that each day now belonged to her. Navigating her new existence required patience. Anna's financial situation was, at last, steady enough to allow the smallest margins of comfort. The debts the family had heaped onto her were finally cleared, her credit beginning to repair itself as months of diligent payment and correspondence bore fruit. No more harassing phone calls, no more footfalls up the apartment stairs that sent her pulse racing. Anna reviewed each new bill and bank statement with the cautious eye she'd earned, no longer afraid, but determined to protect what little she now possessed. The transformation also extended inward. For so long, Anna's sense of self had orbited around family burdens, old wounds, and the longing to belong. Now, as her siblings receded into their separate worlds, she discovered the capacity to define herself beyond the history she'd inherited. She returned to the writing desk in her living room, picking up the journals she'd neglected for years. Early drafts, unsent letters, half-formed stories, and lists for a life she had never dared pursue became the blueprints for bolder plans. But building anew from the bottom was not just an exercise in solitary healing. Anna knew that true self-recovery required her to re-enter the world in ways she had long avoided. She enrolled in night classes at a local community college, intent on sharpening her skills in business and accounting, not out of bitterness, but so that nobody would ever again exploit her trust or ignorance. Sitting in a classroom with students a decade younger felt at first like failure, then gradually like a privilege. Each lecture, each assignment completed, became a stone in the foundation of her new life. Outside academics, Anna pushed herself to reconnect, carefully, with the kind of community she'd once believed was out of reach. She volunteered at a women's support center, sharing her story in small, confidential gatherings. Some women wept quietly and thanked her for her honesty. Others, still raw from their own betrayals, nodded in recognition or shared careful suggestions born from their trials. Anna didn't pretend to have it all figured out. Instead, she became a voice encouraging others. Even if you're at the bottom, you can still rise. Your story isn't finished. She rebuilt friendships that she had let fall away, allowing herself to be vulnerable in new, more honest ways. Anna apologized where she needed to, forgave where she could, and, most importantly, let herself accept the care of others. Her circle shifted from the chaos of her birth family to a chosen family of kindred spirits who valued her for her resilience, humor, and quiet strength. Yet the legacy of pain was not something she could, or should, erase overnight. Some evenings, Anna felt the old ache tugging at her, reminders of bitter memories or lingering guilt. There were days her mother called, leaving gentle but tentative messages. Anna listened and then decided when or if she would respond. Lily checked in with texts or the occasional visit, neither sister pretending forgiveness was automatic, but both accepting that reconciliation could be a hopeful, ongoing process. One cold, bright afternoon, Anna walked the familiar path along Buffalo Bayou, leaves tumbling down, their colors catching the low slant of the sun. She paused to watch a group of school children feed ducks near the water. Their laughter was unrestrained, reminding her that even after years lost in family storms, innocence and hope could still surface. Anna realized with a start that her bitterness had faded, not vanished, but changed, woven into the story of her survival. As fall deepened, Anna pursued a job that matched both her new degree and her rebuilt self-esteem, an entry-level position at a legal aid clinic where her careful attention to detail, honed through years of managing paperwork and crises, proved invaluable. She sat across from strangers in need, gently guiding them through forms, listening to stories that were sometimes even darker than her own. With every client, every co-worker who welcomed her, Anna reclaimed a sense of purpose not tethered to her family's burdens. Celebrating her first paychecks, Anna allowed herself small pleasures, a new pair of shoes, a Saturday at the museum, an elaborate homemade meal for friends. Each act, however minor, felt defiant, a way of insisting she was worthy of joy, not just endurance. Looking at herself in the mirror, Anna noticed not just the exhaustion, but a steadiness in her eyes, a subtle confidence earned line by line. Through all this, she held close a promise, spoken sometimes silently and sometimes aloud. Even from the bottom, we can rise. Justice isn't only for the powerful. It can belong to those written off, those who refuse to stay silent or broken. Anna knew that her journey stood not only as proof of her own resilience, but also as hope for anyone fighting their way out of darkness. She had learned to stand up, even if her knees still trembled. On hard ground she'd cleared herself. As Thanksgiving approached, Anna hosted a small dinner for her new circle: classmates, colleagues, neighbors she'd befriended. She looked around the warm, crowded room and realized, with gratitude and pride, that love could be chosen, belonging rebuilt, and dignity restored, one step at a time. Later that night, standing on her fire escape beneath a sky washed clean by fall rain, Anna looked out over the city that had been both her crucible and her home. Her scars did not disappear, but neither did they define her. She closed her eyes, breathing in crisp air, feeling not just survival, but the first true taste of freedom. To anyone still struggling in the shadows, Anna's heart offered one steady message. You may be at the bottom now, underestimated, unheard, but you can stand. You can claim justice for yourself. In the end, it's not where you start that matters. It's how you rise.